best to get to them. The purpose of this evening is twofold. First, it's to celebrate the work of these brilliant young artists who I'm sitting with right now, who will introduce themselves momentarily. And second is to engage with you, audience members, about Silence is Violence, the future of the field. Before going any further, I would like to welcome and congratulate our phenomenal ensemble. They wrote and acted in the series. So I just want each of you to introduce yourselves, starting with Autumn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Autumn Angelettie. I use she, her pronouns. And after this finals week, I will be a senior acting major at the illustrious Howard University. I'm a student actor, playwright, director, and producer. And I am so excited to be here tonight.
Awesome. Let's go with Ayanna.
My name is Ayanna Fowler. My pronouns are she, her. And after next week, I will be a Howard alumna.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Jauqcir.
Hello, everyone. I am Jauqcir LaFond. I use he, they pronouns, and I also am 1 week away from being a Howard senior acting major and classical voice minor. Woo-hoo.
Congratulations, and thank you all. So for those who are watching online, we would love if you could enter into the chat a word or a phrase or just something that resonated with you about Silence is Violence, the future of the field. And while you all do that, I'll give some background about Silence is Violence. So Silence is Violence is a social justice performance series that started in 2015 at Young Playwrights Theater. And this was in response to the death of Michael Brown Jr. And it was done in an effort to engage young people to talk about current events and to be able to share their ideas and thoughts with the world. So since that one-time event, it's grown into an annual event, and we've covered all sorts of topics from police brutality, immigration policies, LGBTQ plus culture and pride, urban environmentalism, gentrification, experiences of young displaced Black mothers. And this go round, we're exploring the topic of American theater, what the future of American theater will be in light of the reckoning of race that we've experienced in the United States. So the process of Silence is Violence, the future of the field began last fall when YPT partnered with Howard University's Department of Theater Arts. And the goal was to basically devise a virtual performance. And Autumn, Ayanna, and Jauqcir auditioned for this production. They were cast, and we begun weekly writing workshops last fall. They ended up writing the piece over their winter break, writing and revising, and then we begun rehearsals and recording in January of this year. We also worked with a video editor, Anthony Amos, and our sound designer, Kevin Lee Alexander, to put everything together in post-production. So before we take questions from our live audience, I have a couple of questions for the ensemble. First, the question is just what inspired you all to write a web series rather than a play, rather than a short film? Where did the inspiration for a web series come from?
That's a good question.
It's a great question.
I waited for so long. Go ahead, Ayanna.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it was influenced by the culture that we have going on right now, where we're all inside, we're all watching things like Netflix and Hulu and whatever streaming service. You're watching things back to back to back, and you're used to like the episodic storytelling. So I feel like we were just responding to what is happening currently.
I think that sums it up. I think so. We debated it for a long time, and we were thinking long form versus short form. And I think the web series made it in a way that's digestible to us and therefore digestible to others in our minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with everything. And also I was thinking in terms of what we were trying to do with the narrative arc and how we were trying to show these characters on their journey, I think the web series format, doing it episodically, just emphasizes kind of here's where they started and here's where they ended. And so we kind of wrote it as one thing and thought of it as one whole project, but yeah, just knowing that how episodes are kind of digested, it's just it just made sense to do it in episodes, little chunks.
Yeah, that definitely makes complete sense. Just in the day and age that we're in, I remember us talking about the fact that people binge watch a lot now. So being able, being able to address people's different situations, if they can sit and watch 20 minutes at a time, or if they can sit and binge watch the whole thing, I think it was brilliant. And for the audience out there, it was this ensemble who came up with the idea of a web series. Before this, Silence is Violence was always theater. It was always live. So this was an experiment for all of us that I think turned out really well. Second question is just how would you all describe the process of creating this web series? You could speak about the writing process, the devising process, rehearsal, production, just whatever comes to mind for you. But just if someone were to say, well, how did it come together? What would you say?
I think this it's all started with like us kind of asking what we wanted to do with the web series. Like what's the purpose of the series? Like what's the conversation we want to have? And then we began writing. And then we kind of like got to a point where we were like, okay, we wrote this thing and we don't really know if it's like genuine. And then so we sat down and we asked ourselves like, okay, who are we as artists? And then what do we like want to tell? Like what kind of stories do we want to tell as artists in like our careers? And like what politically excites us and what kind of stories do we gravitate to? And so it became less of like what conversation do we want to have and more so like what world do we want to build. And yeah, I guess that's like that's the center of it.
Yeah, that's so fun fact. The play that Jauqcir worked on, that Jauqcir wrote, that we worked on in the world of the web series, that play was the original thing that we wrote, the story of Amari Smith. And so the story of Amari Smith was originally kind of like a manifestation, I think, of all of our anxieties about just being Black people in the United States and being Black people in theater. And it was like upsetting and a little bit traumatic, and it was truthful, but it wasn't what we wanted to release. And so then we kind of took that and embedded it into the web series that you all saw, and then had a conversation about that story within the web series. So that's like a cool fact about how the writing process evolved over time.
I was just going to say it was a process of trial and error and bouncing ideas off each other and writing with each other for the first time. Like we're all Howard students. We all know each other, but we never written a show together, which is something completely different.
Yeah, thank you all for that. So speaking of writing, did any of you consider yourselves a writer before this process? And if not, do you consider yourself a writer now?
I think I considered myself a writer before this process, but I consider myself a better writer after this process because of the devising process that made me, I don't know, take myself a little bit more seriously and know that the things that I create are meaningful, even if I don't love them right away. And then just over the course of this whole writing process, getting to bounce ideas off of other, who I consider really good writers, and just like being validated in that way too.
I did not consider myself a writer. I think I would have called myself someone who like could write a story and like was interested in writing, but not like a writer. But it's like since doing this project, it's like, oh, like I wrote a lot for this project and like have been writing since and like recognize that I wrote before. And it's just like, oh yeah, like also similar to Autumn, like I'm definitely a much better writer after this experience. So yeah, I am a writer.
I considered myself a writer before this, but more of so like a novelist. I didn't consider myself a playwright. I always like shied away from plays. They just sounded too complicated for me to even think about writing. But now this whole process has opened me up more to writing plays because it's not as difficult as you think.
That's awesome. You know, as a writer, often the process is solitary. So like I know for you, Autumn, you've written plays before. Ayanna, you mentioned that you've written novels, or that's your genre of choice. What was it like writing collaboratively?
It was interesting. It was like, for the most part, it was really great to like bounce ideas off of you two and like just like we wouldn't have gotten the final product if just one of us attempted to write it and the other two like acted in it. Like this was entirely ours, and that makes it really unique. But also, as with any collaboration process and any like, you know, group project, there's gonna be moments where like we're butting heads. And not even butting heads, just like, like writing together and we're at the keyboard and it's just like the character says this and the other person's like, well, I'm like, well, why wouldn't it? Like, what's like, why not? And then it's just like, oh, there's a moment where like you want to do something, someone else wants to do something, and they don't match, and it's like, then what do you do? But then you learn to compromise, and you learn, and that's what actually strengthens writing and strengthens the story is when you have to like further ask questions about what you want to do and like solidify the reason why. And I think that's why we kind of ended up with a product you're all happy with, is because you were able to kind of like challenge each other in that way.
That's a really good way to put it. The challenge. That's a good language. Yeah, there was it was fun learning about each other and also learning like different things. Like, I don't know, I've gotten to know what Jauqcir and Ayanna's preferred modes of communication are and what times of day like we're all the most productive and like how we like to come up with a draft and then edit it. And that's really cool. And it did, there were points where we were all tired and it was like 11 o'clock at night and we're poking a hole in a plot element and we're like exhausted trying to figure out what it is. And then there were really fun moments where we were laughing at each other's writing and enjoying certain sections and getting to celebrate each other that way.
Yeah, writing collaboratively was really fun just because of those moments where we were stuck and we're like, well, what do we even write? Like, especially when we had to go back to the drawing board, like, okay, like what is the story that we want to do? You learn more about like how to write collaboratively. What do we want to say? What is the audience going to take away? What do we want the audience to take away?
Awesome. For those in our live audience, just in case you're just joining, we are also taking questions from you. So please feel free at any time to enter any of your questions in the chat. One thing I'm curious about from you all is what is something that you learned about yourself as a person and what's something you learned about yourself as an artist in going through this process?
I learned I'm super stubborn. Yeah, I'm very stubborn, and when I'm fixated on an idea, I'm really fixated on the idea. And so like learning about like flexibility and things in that way, I'm growing. I'm always, I'm a work in progress. So I learned that, and I learned that I have a very particular sense of humor that I need to tap into and understand a little bit better. Like the things I find funny are interesting. And so hopefully I'll learn about that more as I write more and navigate that.
I guess I would say that I learned that I write the way I speak. So the way I talk, like I don't convert or translate my writing. Yeah. And I also learned about the type of like artist that I want to be. I always say that, but the type of artist that I want, because my journey with Ayanna Winford and Ayanna me, it was kind of similar, like realizing that the work that I do or the theaters that I work with, it has to be meaningful. Otherwise, I don't feel like I'm doing anything.
I learned that I think the primary thing, or one of the primary things, is that I like enjoy poetry. Poetry is always something that like I like to ingest and like interact with, but it was kind of threatening because I kind of like always viewed it as very like highbrow and like kind of above me. But then like doing this and finding ways to incorporate poetry and also just like responding to certain prompts and just writing in the process made me realize that like, oh, poetry is just like, it's just expression in its simplest form. Like you're just using words to like structure them in a certain way to say a certain thing. And that's helped me with like my writing and like making everything just way less like threatening than I kind of viewed it as before. And then also very similarly, just like I'm really like when I have an idea or like when I have something I want to do and like other people disagree, it's just like, why? Like, like I get like kind of annoyed. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like it's so fun, or like, yeah, we should have this because it's like a cool idea. But like, once again, like it only strengthens the writing once you have people who disagree with you.
Awesome. I'm wondering, was there anything that you put in the series, whether through writing or through acting, that you felt nervous about being out there in the world?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I was having a lot of like not a lot of anxiety, but just like some mild anxiety about the poem in the show Lady, and like the imagery that I kind of like decided to go along with the poem, like me being in a skirt, kind of me presenting more feminine, painting my nails and all that stuff. I was anxious about that being out there, but it was like seeing it in the context of the show and just like what it meant for both my character and myself. I was like, oh no, like I love that that's out there. I love that people get to see that side of me because like it was fun to like wear a skirt and like paint my nails and like write about it was fun to write about my anxiety and like I was a little afraid that people would misinterpret it or like not quite know what I was saying, but it was like, oh, it doesn't really matter. Like I know what it means and it's out there and people can interpret however they want. But like I was just I surprised myself at how comfortable I was like seeing myself in that light.
Yeah, thank you for that. Were you about to say something, Ayanna?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's funny because I was a little nervous about the little piece that I had there in there as well, just because it felt like I was breaking down the tradition of what theater is supposed to look like, and like that's like it's supposed to be this place where you go in, you sit down, and you enjoy this. You shut up, you watch it, and you enjoy it. But like that's not the way that we should be watching theater. It should be like a collaborative, like enjoyment experience when you get to actually it's a talk back between the person on stage and you. So I was a little nervous just because I was like, if they're like theater like people watching this and like artistic directors and directors and like producers and whatever, if they're watching this, they're gonna think, oh well, she doesn't know how to sit down and like be professional and enjoy theater. So I was a little bit nervous because I was like, oh.
I was kind of nervous about the whole thing and nervous about like the Liz Vernon plot because for the very beginning of the process, we kept trying to find ways to insert humor into the storyline to sort of, I think we were like subconsciously trying to distract from the fact that we're saying things that everybody isn't going to like or agree with. And so I was kind of shaking when we were watching the whole thing all together because we're challenging like arbiters of these power structures and being like, hey, like you're causing harm to people of color. Like that's what we're telling you is you're causing harm to specifically Black people in this storyline, and we want you to cut it out. Like that's a little scary coming from some early career like artists that we don't have relationships with everybody we want to work with yet for them to know like it's not necessarily personal. It's like this system and this structure is harming us and we want you to contribute to fixing it. Yeah, even just talking about it makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, I mean, it is nerve-wracking. I think it's really brave how much you all put out there because these are conversations that I've witnessed artists have in private rooms, maybe on a panel now in this last year because of just the U.S. is waking up to what's going on as far as race and anti-Blackness. But for you all to put those truths, I think, is what made the piece especially so poignant. And just the level of vulnerability, like Jauqcir with the Lady poem and just how you shot that. So for the audience who don't know, the majority of the scenes that took place in a virtual setting, we shot together. But those moments like Jauqcir's segment, his kind of reality show confessional, Ayanna's segment about theater, and then Autumn's about the screenwriter, her sketch with the screenwriter, were all filmed by the ensemble themselves. So kudos to you for being able to tell stories in a new way without having a director or photography or someone right there coaching you through it. I think you did a phenomenal job. I do see a question. Oh, what were you gonna say?
Oh, real quick, just to respond also to like Autumn's anxiety is like, yeah, I was gonna say I was also just anxious about the whole thing like coming out. And we had a conversation, we were like, we're making a lot of commentary about an industry we're not quite in yet. And that's like, we're a little anxious about that. But then watching it and like already like our involvement with the industry has like picked up since the show. It's like, oh no, watching it, it's like, no, it's like it's pretty real, like what we're already encountering, what we're going to encounter. And I think like making the commentary then and anticipating all the kind of microaggressions you're going to face has equipped me, I'll stick in the eye, like in dealing with stuff that like certain moments that I've faced already. And like, I've realized that I'm actually not interested in like compromising myself just to perform in the industry. And I don't know if I would have gotten to that place where I'm comfortable like being like, oh, actually I don't, want to just a gig just to have the gig. Like I want to do art that like speaks to me, and I want to operate in spaces that like are meant for me. I don't think I would have realized that without. I'm frozen. I froze.
This is what happens. This is real life, people. People out there, this is real life in the virtual world of all these meetings and things. So don't worry about it, Jauqcir. You're back. Do you have any more to say?
That was pretty much done. Just I don't think I would have gotten to that place of being comfortable without the series.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we do have a question in the chat from Tishan. She asks, did this project inspire any future projects for you, either as a group or individually?
It's funny because I had my younger sister watch it. I don't know why she watched it, but she watched it. She's like 11, 12. And she called me afterwards to talk about it. And she's like, well, what's next? What's the next episode? And I said, that's it. I said, those 3 episodes, that's the end. That's over. But I don't think it has inspired future projects for me, but it definitely inspired my writing. I had to write a research paper for my honors program, and it definitely influenced the way, because it was about theater, it definitely influenced the way that I was writing, because I was thinking more about the industry, as a business, rather than just like as a dream.
I think in like not specifically a project, but also sort of just a trajectory that I think YPT has taken me like down. I don't know. I kind of there was a period where I was like, I'm going to work with Black ensembles on like shows written by Black people, directed by Black people, and that's all I'm going to do. And people would be like, that's really cute, good luck with that when you leave Howard, that's so adorable. And like doing it here made me realize it's possible. Like all of the brains and the art, like all the people we need are readily available. We just have to like find them and connect with them. And like, if I want to do that, I totally can. And so, yeah, it just like, it kind of validated a want that I thought was maybe unrealistic.
Yeah, I like the word you use, like trajectory. Like, I guess as I was kind of like, I imagine myself as a writer like a few years down the line or whatever, but I always imagine myself as like strictly a playwright. But then doing this, it was like, oh, this is just TV. Like, like this is what a TV episode is. Like, once we like build a strong enough world and like really solidify our characters, we can kind of write whatever once we have all that stuff. And so it's like exciting to think about, oh yeah, get a little group, get a little writer's room going and like just develop the world, and then you can just write a TV show. And then a movie is like a movie. It's even less time. So the world's our oyster.
Yes, it is. I thought it was a really interesting choice for you all to create characters that were named after your personal selves, but also based on parts of your own personalities. And I want you all to speak more to that. So for those who don't know, who watched the series, the real first names are Jauqcir, Ayanna, and Autumn. And I think that type of thing is not usually done. And I want you all to kind of share some thoughts about what made you decide to do it that way, and even to act it yourselves, because you all had the option of writing it and then YPT hiring career artists to perform your work. What made you decide to do that as well?
I think it was Jauqcir's idea. I think Jauqcir, you thought of it.
To do what?
I thought of us like doing dramatized versions of ourselves. I think it was you. And then I think Ayanna and I kind of were just like, huh, wait, let's lean into that. What would that be about? And then I remember we spent that like one rehearsal kind of like unpacking what it really means to play versions of ourselves, and like what parts of ourselves do we want to heighten and really play for the audience. And we like picked our elements, and I was fire, and you know, it was really cool. And I think I used to kind of like look sideways when people like named their characters after themselves. Like, That's So Raven. I was like, you couldn't come up with any other name. Like, but now I'm like, oh, it makes sense, because if you're going to tell this like very true story, why not just like bring that piece of yourself into it? It's kind of the same thing as like, I don't know, bringing any other piece of myself into it. And just with the name, there's something more tangible to latch onto. And so it like made the experience of acting it richer in some way, because it felt like I couldn't be wrong because it's me. On the other hand, though, it made the vulnerability of it all a lot more challenging, because that's something I think that I struggle with as an actor overall, is like fully letting myself like be invested in a character, and like knowing that it was me and people watching it were going to be equating Autumn the character with Autumn the actor made me so anxious about every choice that I was making. I think I overcame it, though, for the most part.
I don't remember saying we should use our own names. It seems like something I love a good meta, one of my favorite words. Like, I love like, the fact that we're doing theater and doing a play. It's a web series about that. Like, I love that. And so I think it was partially just kind of leaning into the meta aspects of it, and just like, hey, we're doing a series about like artists working in the theater industry. What are we doing? We're artists working in the theater industry. Why not just name them ourselves? And also, I guess just thinking about like what you were saying, Autumn, like characters who are named like just their names, like Issa Rae. I love Issa Rae, but like seeing Insecure and like seeing how both Insecure and Awkward Black Girl, like how it's like a character, but like it's not Issa Rae, but it is. And it's like something about capturing the essence of a person while also being like completely different from the actual person. It's just like really interesting. And I think it was fun to play with.
I almost thought of it as a different reality. Like, it's Ayanna in like world number 135. Like, that's what she's over there doing. That's how I kind of thought of it. Like, we have things that are similar because we probably have the same hopefully have the same parents and upbringing and everything like that. But there have been small little butterfly changes that have made our lives differently. So she wouldn't be the exact same as I would be. But yeah, like echoing what everyone else has said.
And I also learned things about myself playing myself. And like, I don't know, kind of thinking critically, like Autumn Jordan's whole bit was like, I'm countercultural, I'm cutting edge, I fight with people on Twitter, and I do my avant-garde pieces, and like Autumn, the actual person, has done all of those things. And it kind of made me interrogate the motivation for all of that, and I don't know, just like help me grow and like figure out why that is the way that it is in studying the character.
Yeah, I would say it was like a therapy session. When I was looking back, when I was watching it, I was like, what would I do in that situation? Why would you do those things? That's how I felt watching it back.
Yeah, I relate, especially because like, I think it's safe to say my character was the most like antagonistical. Is that a word? I don't know. I think my character was like the antagonist, and like kind of the opposing force, or the one who like had the most distance to travel in terms of like being in the industry and wanting to cater to like white standards. And it made me ask a lot of questions about myself and like what I wanted in my career. And it was like, ooh, I actually do like want to be in like the industry for these reasons, and it's not great. So yeah, a lot of self-interrogation, which is very helpful.
Thank you. We have a comment from one of our audience members. I saw in the chat that's Michelle. Hi, Michelle. And Michelle says the meta aspects of the web series were so interesting. I ended up loving the layers. Thank you for that, Michelle. And for everybody else who's watching, please feel free. So even if you don't have a question, but you have something you want to share, this is your chance. We have these artists right here and we want to celebrate them. So don't be shy. Please enter what you have to say in the chat. One thing that I've been thinking about, and that some of the feedback that I've gotten from people who've watched the series, is that you all were able to touch on so many topics, but still tie everything together, and it didn't feel like too much, you know? So I wonder about the themes that you really wanted the audience to walk away with, because you all touched on a lot of things as far as identities of Black artists, what it's like to collaborate with white theater companies, what it's like to be exploited, interpersonal conflict with each other and trauma, and what's fair to put on stage and what isn't, all sorts of stuff. So I want to know from you all, what do you want the audience to walk away with? What themes do you want to make sure that they don't miss when they watch the series?
Okay, I can start. So like in the writing process, in the devising process, we made a lot of Google Docs that had just like all of the things we wanted to talk about. And what's so funny is there was so much, like there's so many things we dealt with in this web series, and there was so much more in earlier drafts, and we kind of had to prioritize a few things. And to me, they're all like under this sort of same umbrella of like, this piece came out of like a very tangible anxiety about just like existing as a Black person, as a Black artist, as a Black woman, as a Black queer person. Just like all of these intersecting identities are paired with anxiety. And so a lot of the themes of the piece, I think, just stem from how can we be supported? How can we get resources? Why are we scared of being considered unprofessional and never getting a job again? Why are we scared that our art won't be considered legitimate if we go work at a community theater versus a LORT theater? Like all of those things. And so I think the biggest thing that I want people to take away from it are looking at the little things, all of the little components that you detected, and then kind of understanding the big picture that they're a part of. And that, I mean, you know, we can blame capitalism and systemic racism as the big picture things, but the big picture things are like, there's a system that's set up against us. Like we're set up to fail. And so all of these anxieties are products of that. So if we work on like transforming the system that's setting us up to fail to make it set us up to succeed, then all of those things go away. And what is your role in helping us in that journey? It's you know, it's long and it's hard, but that's what I want everyone to think about.
Ayanna, were you gonna say something? Yeah, so I guess I don't have like a specific theme. There's lots of themes, but the primary thing that I kind of wanted to, or as we wanted to like, want the audience to like walk away with, is to ask themselves like, what is your relationship to the status quo? And both like in terms of theater, but just like in everyday life, like why do we do the things that we do? Like why do we follow rules just because they're like, that's what we're used to? And also thinking about like how this piece is like kind of a response to the like ever-changing like political climate of starting last summer. It's like thinking about like the push towards abolition and like the conversation about policing, and it's just like, why do we think and uphold police and the police structure as this thing? Not saying that like once you watch the show you're gonna be an abolitionist, but like, you know, it's something to, it's an encouragement to kind of just consider like everything in our life and the structures in our life, and thinking about why these structures exist and how they're serving us or not serving us, and then kind of going from there.
I would say the theme that I wanted to be taken away the most was the life of a Black artist, because you see Autumn and she graduated from college and isn't really doing what she thought she was going to be doing. Like, and then you see Jauqcir and he had this great hit play, but no ideas afterwards. And then you see Ayanna on this like career field that is what she thought was her dream, but she's not actually happy. Like you see the life of these Black artists and what it feels like to be a 21st century Black artist, and we have to pay the bills, but you want to do meaningful work, but you want to work at a theater that actually appreciates you, but those theaters aren't lured. But like, there's so many things, so many different challenges that we have. And I just wanted the audience to be mindful of that, or aware of what it feels like to be a 21st century Black artist.
That's awesome. Do y'all have a favorite scene of the series? And it doesn't necessarily have to be one that you were in. And the reason I asked that is because the way this was shot, you all saw all of the group scenes because obviously you were in them, but you didn't get to see the scenes that you all shot individually. So I just wonder, while watching the final product, was there a favorite moment or scene?
Off the top of my head, only because I love a good dramatic fight scene. I really loved the end of episode 2. I just love when I love a build up and then an explosion. That's what stories are about. It's climax and then resolution. And also it's really fun to write that and just get everything I wanted to say out there. And so I like that. I liked watching it. But I also really liked Autumn's external moment, the Sam Levinson skit. I thought it was really, really cute. And I just remember you told me the concept. I was like, oh yeah, that's funny. That's good.
Yeah, I really liked Autumn's skit, and then I really liked the fight scene as well, just because you could feel the tension in the air and us going back and forth. And I mean, it would have been better if it was live, but the back and forth and that tension, it was really, really good stuff.
I mean, okay, so admittedly, the fight scene was the first thing that popped into my head also. But I also really love the end where we're kind of talking about the things that we thought of that never came to fruition. And then now we're trying to reignite them in this vision to leave. And yeah, I really love that thing because I love a good, here are some tangible things we can latch onto to make the world a better place. And we came up with a list that was meaningful to us. And that process was really cool. And so that scene means a lot to me.
Yeah, that scene especially was also really helpful in determining what we wanted to see in the industry. We got that scene and we were like, oh, right, we have to answer what we think the future of the field is. This is the time to do that. And then once we sat down and kind of started writing and figured it out, we were like, oh yeah, no, we do really want these things. We do want theater to be more of a communal space. And so it was cool to write that scene and see it, and just it felt very genuine. Yeah, we genuinely want these things, and these characters have it. So I think we can have it eventually. And that was nice to see.
Thank you. Michelle also says she loves the fight scene. The crescendo of conflict at the end of episode 2 was amazing. Yeah, I agree. Y'all were on it. And I think one of the things I shared this with you all in the postmortem, that directing in boxes, I'm not able to see you all interact in space. So I'm looking at one of you and I have notes for one of you at a time. But just the reaction moments, y'all were on point with the acting too. So for me, I felt very proud as your director and as somebody who's watched you in this process over the past few months to see all of that. So it wasn't just the fight, it was also the nonverbal acting that y'all were doing and just incorporating all the chops that you're learning from your great Howard University theater program. Shout out to Professor Ruffin. So yeah, thank you for that. We have another question from World Football Champions who asks, after doing the show, what is one thing you would change about your character, or what is one thing you would add and why? That's a great question. Thank you.
One thing I would change or add to Autumn Jordan, the character, I think we touched on it a little bit. But if Autumn Jordan had her own little spin-off moment, we'd sink our teeth into it a little bit more. There's a lot of hypocrisy to the character that we didn't really dive into. And it's this whole, I'm avant-garde, I'm different, I am so radical and I believe in all of these things, but I'm also working within the systems, the same systems as everybody else, and working in the same structures as everybody else. And I'm not doing a lot of like brain power on my own until the very end. And I think the thing I would add is just a little bit more of that for Jauqcir and Ayanna's characters to engage with. I seem like I know everything and I know it all, and like that's like potentially a character flaw. But like there are things that I still do, things that I still perpetuate, my character Autumn Jordan, things that I still do and perpetuate that I think is worth looking at, because I think a lot of Black artists of the 21st century are like Autumn Jordan and think they have all the answers when they're still doing things, and they still have improvements they can make, and they should look at themselves within the story rather than on the outside telling everyone else what to do. Yeah.
I think I would add more assertion to Ayanna in the show, just because she didn't really assert herself. She didn't really take charge. If like after the email from Liz, like she was hurt by it, but didn't make any actions. I would make her more assertive, take action more.
I very similar to you, Autumn. Like, would like to see Jauqcir DuPont like after a few years after, to see how they've grown. I think primarily to see how they've become more vulnerable just in their everyday life. Because also, like, once again, like playing this character made me interrogate a lot of things within myself, and like how I am vulnerable and how I'm not, and like when I am, when I'm not. And I think it's interesting as I get more comfortable being vulnerable, like seeing Jauqcir DuPont, like what it looks like to have this writer who to go from a very, very like strong stance about their art and about their writing, what like vulnerability and authenticity adds to it and like adds to their art. I think that'd be really interesting to see.
Yeah, thank you all for that. And Tishan gave y'all some snaps. I don't know who the snaps are for, but I'll snap for all of you. I wonder about just what was the most challenging part of the execution of this project. So we're all theater artists. We're used to theater rehearsal and how that functions. And we didn't do this together. Y'all were even in different states, and we did it in StreamYard just as we are right now, the recording process, the majority of it. So I wonder for you, what was the most challenging part of that, filming an entire story digitally or virtually and without being in the same room as the artists who you're working with?
That was the hardest part, is especially filming on StreamYard, not being able to actually look at the people, because if I look at you, it looks like I'm looking down, so I have to look at the camera, so I can't see any reactions or get any feedback off of what you're doing. So I would say that was one of the hardest parts, and also not having that long extended rehearsal process, having like 1 or 2 rehearsals to like get this in our body a little bit, and then now you got to record it. I would say that. And also not being able to be in your body, like sitting down in this chair, not being able to like get up and move your body a little bit more while acting.
Yeah, emphasis on the body for me. Like my easy cop-out answer is that the biggest challenge was the lines, and realizing that I had like a very quick turnaround to memorize them, and like, you know, room for improvement in that area. But like the physicality of it, I didn't realize that I didn't know how Autumn Jordan stood or walked or like what her posture was until you told me to get up for episode 2 and try the scene standing. And I was like, wow, this is so unfamiliar. I have no idea like what Autumn Jordan does when standing. And so yeah, I think that's a pitfall of virtual theater, is we do so much seated that we forget there's a whole world where our characters live and move through the world.
I think the most challenging thing for me was like having to record while just really exhausted, like tired, and like in combination to the quick turnaround, because it was like we were doing this, and then also our production of 21 Strings, the Howard Players. And then also we were starting the semester, and it was just like, whoa, like a lot was going on. It was like having to set up every time we film, and then like move everything around. Our room was always a mess. I had clothes everywhere, and just the environment was very hectic. And it was like, oh wow, this is new experience. So it was just like navigating such a new experience while also just like going through like a lot and just being tired always was, a lot. But it was fun. It was a fun like acting. Like I felt like an actor. I was like, oh, I'm just so busy. Like it was, it was really rewarding ultimately.
Awesome. So you all touched on this a little bit when you were talking about the future of the field and developing that last scene of your play, where the meta moment of having these three artists having a live Q&A and StreamYard like we're having right now. But I'm wondering, do you all have personal feelings about the future of the field that did not get expressed in that last scene, as far as what you see for American theater, what you wish for American theater in this time?
Definitely for me. I how do I organize all these thoughts? I'm hoping and praying that our generation is the one that ushers in like theater being bigger than baseball. Like that's what I want to go back to, is theater being the biggest thing, because to me it's the all-encompassing art form. Every kind of artist can engage in theater in some way. Engineers can engage with theater, computer scientists can engage with theater. Anybody can do it, and anyone can be a part of it. And that's magical to me, and I wish it was the biggest thing on earth again. And so for the future of the field, like there's that, like I want to take over the world component of it. And then there's also the fact that I think theater is also, as one of the oldest art forms, if not the oldest art form on the planet, like there's to me the most room for connecting with community and being a part of the growth of a population, not just culturally, but materially. Like, film was kind of born out of like, oh, we're playing with technological advancements and we're playing with making money. But theater started just like we were just doing things, seers and doers in a circle outside, like just making theater. And so there's so much room there for it to be like materially important and helpful to a population, like outside of capitalism, if that makes sense. And that's my biggest dream for the future of the field, is getting back to a theater that is for everybody, that everybody can access and wants to access.
I would say the same, that I want theater to be bigger than sports and be bigger than sitting at home and watching TV. And I feel like after this whole pandemic, when we all rejoin each other, my hope is that theater will pick up and take off, because you will be able to have that live experience. It'll be different than sitting at home and watching Netflix and just talking to your screen. You'll be able to like have an actor on stage and get that energy from another human being. That's what I'm hoping and praying for.
I mean, y'all articulated it how I was going to articulate it. I think I just want it to be more accessible, and I just want more people to be excited about theater, because there was a point where like, yeah, this was all the art that there was. There's someone performing, people being like, oh yay, like that was good. And I said something to you the other day, Autumn. I was like, oh right, theater, like you don't need electricity to do theater. Like you can be one person or a few people or a bunch of people just telling a story, and then an audience, and that's all you need. And I think that like in order to get to that big place where like it's consumed by everyone, it kind of weird way has to start small. We have to be doing just as much theater as possible, more basement theater, more like theater in the park, more public theater. As I just want to see a world where especially theater students, but like just actors in general, don't consider the actual stage the only place in which they can do their craft, the only place they can act. Yeah, that's what I want to say.
Beautiful. I just want to give a last call for audience feedback and questions, because we're about to wrap up soon. So even if you just want to say, great job, just something to let your presence here be known. Thank you all for sticking with us and tuning in on this Friday night. Much appreciated. The last question I have for you all is just what's next for you? You know, as artists, as people, you know, the formal engagement with YPT has ended with this postmortem. But as I shared with you in our postmortem, I don't want our engagement to end, you know. So I wonder just what's next. What do you have going on?
Well, Ayanna has a senior showcase that's dropping, well, I guess redropping, and a solo show that we're all gonna see. I don't know, I want you to talk about that because that's another like writing process and acting in it process that you did.
Yeah, I guess that's the only thing that I have that's immediately next is the senior showcase that we have re-premiering, and then the solo performances, which are coming up next week. Week after next. And that's the like I said, that's the most current things. But after that, it's just like life, auditioning, getting out there, being an adult. Because I'm living that post-grad life. You two are both still in college. So the post-grad life is a little scary because you don't know what's coming next. Everyone keeps saying it's going to hit you in fall when you realize, oh, I don't have to go to class.
Yeah, in a very like literal, like the thing that I'm doing next sense. I'm directing a play and Jauqcir's in it. It's called Black Thoughts You Can Redo by TJ Lewis. And it's part of Lime Arts Productions 20 by 20 Fringe, which is an inaugural festival of plays written, performed in, directed by, stage managed by only people in their 20s. So it's a pretty like similar philosophy to YPT, and it's been a really fun process. And so, yeah, that is coming out in May. It gets shown 3 times. I think the first date is May 14th, and then there's like the other dates like the 23rd and something like that. So, you know, if you're interested, you can follow me on Instagram at PHLBambi, and I'll be posting about it. You can see it there. So yeah, that's like a tangible thing. And I don't know if Jauqcir wants to speak to more about that, but like in an abstract like thing in life, I'm realizing like more and more like my journey as an artist, and we all talked about trajectory a little bit. And I think I really want to figure out how to merge my life as an organizer. I organize for police free schools, and my life as a theater maker, and figuring out like how those things coexist and how those things like do something together. So that's kind of like where my brain is at lately, is like creating that master plan. So if anyone does like specifically organizing and theater in combination, go ahead and let me know. Should you know, hit me up, and I would love to figure out what that is in the future.
Yep, I'm in Black Thoughts You Can Redo, directed by the Autumn Angelettie. We'll get you info on that. Besides, after Black Thoughts, I'm honestly probably going to take a little break from performing anything for a second and focus more on writing, write some more poetry, write some more plays, maybe like one, you know, I'm in the short play realm. I want to write one like complete, like full length this summer. And also just like kind of just like making more art, like making more music and making more, you know, like getting more into photography, and just, it's the summer of creation for me. So I'll be working on that, as well as doing some research and like kind of just further defining my research interests in relation to theater, and yeah, preparing to study theater in grad school. And yeah, so there's a lot of preparation for the future, and a lot of like figuring out my voice as a writer and as an artist. You can follow me on Instagram at JAUCQIR.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw we have a comment from Jessica Wisser. Jessica says, the series took my breath away. Thank you for your amazing work. And what a perfect way to end this. Thank you for that, Jessica. I just sincerely thank you three for this process. It was a process where you all expressed how much you learned, but I learned so much about myself in producing this, you know, and working with you all. And that's part of why I love YPT, and being able to have an avenue for young people to express themselves, and it was just really phenomenal how you all created this very intricate and specific story that spoke to so many things that I felt and haven't been able to articulate. So I thank you for your brilliance, for your generosity with yourselves and in telling these stories and with trying a new thing. It was just a wonderful process. Michelle also says, oh, thank you, Michelle. Farah's questions were so good. It was hard to think of more things to ask these talented writers and performers. The talkback was the perfect coda to the web series. Thank you for that. Do y'all have any final thoughts before I like officially wrap it up? Anything you want to say to the audience even?
Just that y'all should know that Farah Harris is an icon and a brilliant director, and I'm so thankful for her as a person.
That's good. That's good. Say that. That's a good one. Very, very true. Yeah, I'm extremely thankful for this process. I'm extremely thankful for my lovely ensemble and for you, Farah, and for Kita. Like, it's just been really, really amazing and has made me so much more confident in myself, which is exciting and trouble for everyone now that now that I got a little more of that. And also just to the audience, thank you for watching, thank you for engaging, and we hope the call to action is clear, that it's a group effort to transform these systems and to make the world a better place for everyone and to undo some of this harm and heal some of this harm that's been done. And excited to do it.
And I was just going to say that this YPT was my first time doing theater virtually, shut down. And like being a student, you just feel like you're in the grind of, all right, let me get these things done. Let me complete what I need to complete. You don't really remember why you love doing the work because you're just trying to get the work done. And then I'm so thankful for this whole process because it reminded me why I love acting and why I love writing and why I want to do these things in the future.
Thank you all. Thank you for the kind words. Y'all are so sweet. And thank you again. Thank you to everybody for tuning in to the live Q&A. You didn't have to be here on a Friday, but you were, and we appreciate that. We'd like to continue the conversation beyond tonight. So please feel free to leave your comments and feedback under this video on YouTube or even just under the episode videos. Don't let the only comments be spam. Share what you think about it. And to find out more about Young Playwrights Theater or Silence is Violence, we would love for you to visit our website, www.yptdc.org, and to follow us on social media at YPTDC. I also just want to thank again Howard University's Department of Theater Arts for this opportunity of partnership. It was such a great experience, and we look forward to doing it again. So yeah, take care, everybody. Thank you so much. And we hope that you all out there are well. This is a difficult time, but we hope that you experience joy. We hope that this series has given you some hope for the future, because it certainly has given me hope. So good night to everybody who's out there. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Night.